Anthromorphism in picture books. The research question that I am investigating is, does anthropomorphizing animals in picture books allow children to become more sympathetic and relate to the animals on a more human level? I will present my research findings that I have conducted over the last 4 to 5 weeks in a compelling and persuasive way. I will be presenting two perspectives on this topic. The first perspective being how anthropomorphizing animals can impact on children's sensitivity and sympathy towards animals and relate to them on a human-like level. The second perspective being how the anthropomorphism of animals in children's picture books does not impact on a child's emotional attachment and sympathy towards animals, as they are able to differentiate between real life and fiction. By the end of my presentation, I will finish with my concluding statement. Whether or not I believe anthropomorphism in children's picture books affects children's emotional attachment and sympathy towards animals. Here are my academic sources. 1. Why anthropomorphism in children's literature? 2. The importance of anthropomorphism in children's literature. 3. Do cavies talk? The effect of anthropomorphic picture books on children's knowledge about animals. And finally, number 4. Young children's learning and transfer of biological information from picture books to real animals. Numerous books for small kids present creatures in fantastical and ridiculous manners, such as wearing garments, talking, and taking part in human-like exercises. According to academic source 3, Do Cavies Talk? The examination introduced here suggests that books that humanize animals can influence youngsters' originations of creatures. According to Juliet, writer of Why Anthropomorphism in Children's Literature, animals have always had a place in literature. She believes that authors purposefully enable children to identify with the animals. According to an article written by Jason G. Goldman, young children already have a hard time distinguishing reality from fantasy. And while most children can distinguish reality from fantasy, when it comes to visual representations of animals, that distortion can be reflected in the content of the story itself. Regarding my third academic source, Why Cavies Talk? They conducted 4 studies. Studies 1, 3, and 4. 5-year-old children saw picture books featuring realistic drawings of novel animal. Half of the children also heard factual, realistic language, while the other half heard anthropomorphized language. In study 2, they replicated the first study using anthropomorphic illustrations of real animals. The results showed that the language used to describe animals in books had an effect on children's tendency to attribute human-like traits to animals, and that anthropomorphic storybooks affect younger children's learning of novel facts about animals. The results they came up with indicated that anthropomorphized animals in books may not always lead to less learning, but do influence children's conceptual knowledge of animals. If children can recognize that animals are, in fact, very far from human-like qualities, then they will detach themselves from the fantasy that animals are more like us. According to UT News, psychology professor Jacqueline Wools discovered that by the age of 4, children learn to use the context in which new information is presented to distinguish between fact and fiction. Having animals do the acting and mistake-making allows the face-saving emotional distance often needed to be able to join the conversation. This is the complete opposite of the first perspective, whereas we were talking about the emotional attachment towards animals making mistakes and acting in a certain way which would represent human-like qualities in which way we would feel more connected. After thorough research, I have come to the conclusion that anthropomorphized animals do not impact heavily on children's emotional attachment towards animals, making it less of an issue at all. In general, I believe that sympathy for animals is common and normal. Even in adult books such as Animal Farm, there are talking animals. I believe that nowadays most picture books given to children are more factual more than anything. I believe that talking animals in picture books is mainly a way for authors just to engage the children and make them more entertained into the book, more so than anything, rather than like change their perspective towards animals. Thank you.